ton of first-time buyers. You know, there's a lot of competition. That's a very good indication of a boom phase. Hey, this is Matt Pichet, the Fruitful Investor and your investing coach. And today's video is about explaining the real estate cycle and how and when you should invest in real estate. Now, there are three phases to the real estate cycle: the boom phase, the slump phase, and the correction phase. And I'll get into that in a second, and I'll explain each phase a little. But first, let's talk about the key drivers and the market influencers. Now, the key drivers are the things that actually move the real estate cycle from one phase to the next. And these are the really important things, such as GDP growth, job growth, population growth in a specific area. And these are the things that actually drive the real estate cycle. And the sophisticated investors like us, we focus on these things, whereas the average investors in the media specifically focuses on the market influencers, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But first, I will say that the real estate cycle doesn't pertain to all of Canada, right? It's not a blanket to say that, oh, all of Canada is in a boom phase or it's in a slump phase. This is a very specific targeted thing, and it really means each area. So it could be each province, and even more so specifically each region. For example, in Kitchener-Waterloo right now, as we will see, we are definitely in a boom phase, but Alberta and a lot of parts of Alberta are definitely in a slump phase or a correction phase. So it's very regional, and a lot of average investors, average people, and even the media makes a big mistake to blanket Canada as one market, as we see in the newspapers all the time, where we see the average price of Canadian homes or the average days on market for Canada. That does not exist. Let me get that straight and put this right out there first before we get into this. There is no such thing as a Canadian real estate market. And if you hear someone say that, you know automatically that they aren't sophisticated and they don't really know what they're talking about. We want to be regional experts, okay? So let's get into the key drivers. So there are three categories for the key drivers to really focus on. Number one is financial. So it's the affordability of rents, the affordability of housing prices, and the financial availability for mortgages, okay? So obviously when house prices are super affordable and easy to get, we're probably in a slump phase, right? The bottom phase, it's super easy to get houses, there's an abundant amount. Okay, in the boom phase, at the top of the boom phase, where it's harder to get in, there's a ton of competition, house prices are at their highest, it's harder to get in. So that's how you can kind of determine which phase of the real estate cycle we're in. The second category is demographic, okay? So demographic is really the number of first-time buyers, which is a huge aspect to the key drivers. I will say that first before we get any further. First-time buyers are an enormous key driver in a real estate cycle. For example, if there's a huge amount of first-time buyers coming in, we are likely in a boom phase. Everybody wants to get in. If there's very little first-time buyers, we're probably in a slump phase or a correction phase. Now, why is that? Because first-time buyers allow everyone else to move up and purchase their next house, right? Their second house. So if there's not a lot of first-time buyers, chances are there's not a lot of sales going on, and sellers can't move up to that next house and sell their house, right? So that's one thing I will say. So the demographic category is first-time buyers, employment rates, if there's a lot of jobs. You know, if the jobs are really kicking ass, you're probably in a boom phase again. Migration and net migration, the more people moving in, the more sales there is, likely a boom phase. If there's nobody moving in, there's less sales, we're likely in a slump phase or a correction phase. And the last category to pay attention to is the emotional category, which is the fear of missing out, right? Or the number of days a house is on the market when selling. So again, in the boom phase, people fear like they're missing out. They want to get in before they miss out. Or houses are selling super quickly, right? Like 3 days on market. Chances are you're in a boom phase. If your house is on the market 90, 120 days before selling, your region is probably in a slump phase or a correction phase, okay? So these are the things that the sophisticated investors, people like us, we focus on these things when we're trying to make a sophisticated decision. Now, market influencers are important and they can impact the key drivers, but the average person in the media reacts too quickly to market influencers and they don't pay attention to these. For example, interest rates. When interest rates go up during a boom phase, that is a really good indication that the boom phase is nearing its end. Now what happened here in Canada and in Kitchener-Waterloo, right? Interest rates just went up, and we are definitely at the top, I think, at the top of the boom phase. So what do you think is coming down the pipeline? Exactly, so think about that. But that doesn't mean it's gonna happen next month, right? Which is what the mistake of a lot of average people in the media do. They think because interest rates went up, it's gonna end tomorrow. This could last a year, 6 months, could last 2 years, we don't know. It's very hard to determine exactly where you are in the boom phase. In fact, nobody can predict how long or what's coming, or when the market's gonna crash. Nobody can predict exactly how long this is, no matter how good they think they are. But we can definitely get a good gauge of where it's going to go. Okay, the second market influencer is ease of borrowing. Okay, so what do we see again, right? Mortgage or lenders are tightening up their financing huge. Okay, the Bank of Canada just made that big change on October 17th and again on November 30th to make it really hard for first-time buyers to get a house. Remember what I said about first-time buyers being super important for the key drivers? Okay, so that's gonna affect first-time buyers, and it will affect them soon. What do you think is gonna happen after that? Okay, think about these things. But it's not gonna happen right now as the media is making it seem. And the last market influencers, or one of the market influencers, is confidence. Confidence in the real estate market, confidence in the local economy of where you're investing with jobs and employment, okay? So just focus on these, and you can read the newspapers all the time, right? Housing market's gonna crash, or houses are overpriced in Kitchener or in the Toronto Star or whatever, okay? Market influencers, okay, huge. They may be right, and they may affect the key drivers, event to some point, but the newspapers are such market influencers, and the mistake is a lot of people make investment decisions based on market influencers, which is where you can come in. For example, like I said in Kitchener, which we'll go over on the graph, I think definitely we're at the top of the boom phase, maybe even nearing the end of the boom phase here in Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. So when people read the newspapers about prices being homes being overpriced and we're gonna crash soon, this is good for the sophisticated investors to buy the properties from the unsophisticated investors, because they're gonna wanna leave the market before the shit hits the fan, right? Well, we know, such as GDP growth, job growth, right? These are very strong in Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge. So we have a good idea that the boom phase is probably gonna last, quite some time. So you can still get definitely good deals from inexperienced sellers and investors. Now there's way more about this topic. I will plug this book, The Secrets of the Canadian Real Estate Cycle by Don Campbell and Greg Head. You should definitely have this book, and I'll put a link in the description below this video where you can get it on Amazon. You definitely need this book. This is probably, I read a ton of books, as you know, tons of books, but this is the book that I come back to most often. If you look through it, there's highlights everywhere. I come back to this book all the time, especially when I get scared, or when I'm reading newspapers and I'm like, oh man, maybe they're right. Maybe shit's gonna hit the fan. I come back to this book, I read through it, I get the knowledge, and I calm down and go, oh, you know what? The key drivers are still really strong, or whatever. My fundamentals of real estate are still very strong. So this book really helps calm me down when the market and the media is going insane. Okay, this is a must-have book. So let's get into kind of the graph where you can see phases of the real estate cycle. So obviously, if we're at the boom, we're at the top of the market. When we go down to the slump, this is the bottom of the market. This is when there's a lot of properties on the market and not a lot of buyers. So a buyer's market would be a very good indication of a slump phase. And again, the correction is when prices start going back up. Typically the longest phase, is the correction. Now, we've seen this throughout history over and over again. This always happens. It's never changed. When there's a boom phase, there's always a slump phase every single time, and then there's always a correction. Now, some might last, the whole cycle might only last 7 years in some places. It might last 15 years like we saw in the early 2000s to, 2002 to 2009, 2010. We know what happened then. Okay, that was a really long, historically, a really long real estate cycle. Okay, so they can change, but not really. They're always the exact same. And all the financial analysts and all the economists and the newspapers, try and say, but this time is different. This time is different. Well, there might be little nuances or differences, but it's always the same. Always the boom to the slump to the correction. So again, as I was saying, in the Kitchener-Waterloo specifically, there's a beginning to a boom phase, there's a middle of the boom phase, and the end. There's always a middle, beginning, and end to each, phase in the cycle. Judging by the key drivers, we are definitely, I think, in the middle to the end. So it's super hard to get a house. There's a ton of first-time buyers. There's a lot of competition. That's a very good indication of a boom phase. The economy here is strong, GDP growth, the migration is very strong. So I think we're definitely in a boom phase. So what's gonna come next? Well, we can plan for a slump phase. So the question is, should you keep buying in Kitchener-Waterloo if we know the slump phase is coming next? Yes, definitely. If you're sophisticated and you're working with a good specialized realtor, you can still get awesome deals all the time on single family properties and multifamily properties in KWC. In fact, I'm finding them every single day, okay? And I am still investing myself. If I get a good deal and a partner lined up, I'm definitely gonna keep buying in the boom phase. Why? Because I keep properties long term, right? Again, that's why I always say 5 to 7 years, you wanna keep every single property. Just in case you slip into the slump phase, we can hold out and sell in the next boom phase. This is why long term is super important, okay? So that's a strategy you wanna use. So again, I'll just do some key points in the slump phase. Like I said, it's a buyer's market typically. There's a ton of properties for sale and houses are on the market the longest. In the corrections, when we start to see things happen again, it kind of goes to a neutral market, buyer and seller. And again, the boom phase is crazy. So should you wait and buy only in the slump phase? Well, some people will say that. Some people want to wait for the crazy deals. But again, we can't time the market. Nobody can time the market. We don't know how long it's going to take before we get here. It could be, I would say, again, here, we're right here. This could be like 3 years before we get to here. So are you really going to sit on the sidelines and wait 3 years? Not really. I wouldn't. And again, it's always a good rule if you're really sophisticated to not really buy at the bottom of the slump phase. Again, it's really hard to time where we are, but typically a lot of sophisticated investors say you should start buying in the correction, like right at the beginning of the correction or even right about here. Okay, you never want to buy at the bottom, even in stock markets or whatever, because it could keep going lower, you don't know. You want to start investing when you start seeing it go back up, typically, if you really want to lower your risk. That's typically when you want to invest. What else can I say? Oh, so don't let this graph scare you, okay? Especially if you bought in Kitchener, in the boom phase and you're like, oh man, prices are gonna go, look at this graph, I'm gonna go down and lose a lot of money. Not really, this is just an over-exaggerated graph. This is pertaining more so to the availability of properties and like how the regional economy is working, but this doesn't really mean prices, okay? So while there might be this is a buyer's market in the boom phase and a seller's market here, for price in Kitchener-Waterloo, the whole real estate cycle in Kitchener-Waterloo historically looks more like this. So you got the boom phase, you got the slump, you have the correction, the boom phase. So Kitchener-Waterloo, price-wise, is a very boring market. If we even do slip in the slump phase, which we know it's coming, it always will, I don't think prices will go down as far as this graph is showing, not even close. It'll just stay flat. Kitchener's really a flat market because our economy here kicks so much ass and there's so much work. We're not really gonna see prices drop, I don't think. If we do, let's say worst case we do and I'm wrong and the prices go down, big deal, honestly, big deal. Have a long-term plan. If prices go down and you bought a house, a semi-detached for $280, which is kind of what they're going for now, and then let's say in 4 years we're in the bottom of the slump phase and that same semi is only worth $280 again 4 years later, okay, big deal. Wait 4 or 5 more years and you'll be back up here again, and then that same semi is gonna be worth $330 again. Like, that's why long-term is super important, okay? But in the meantime, this is I think a really good video and good tips to kind of help you realize where your region is on the real estate cycle. Again, it's very regional. In Ontario, specifically in Southern Ontario, we're kicking ass. We're definitely in the boom phase. In Alberta, like I said, it looks like they're in a slump correction. I'm not an expert in Alberta, but that's what it looks like, okay? So these are some great tips. I hope you learned something. If you did learn anything, please click like right below this video or comment. It goes a long way telling my videos get more views. And don't forget to subscribe to get more of these awesome, sophisticated real estate investing tips. I'll see you in the next video.
Put your money in that real estate. I put my
Hey, before you click another video, I want to give you some free stuff. You like free stuff, right? Click on the first link below this video and get my book, Single Family Investing Made Simple, absolutely free. Read as I walk a real-life client through the entire investing process from start to finish and document it for you. Click on the second link and get my other book, The Real Estate Investor's Handbook to Freedom. This book is a must-have for any investor looking to take their business and life to the next level. And last but not least, get my third and best book, 101 Single Family Investing Tips. Inside, you'll find 101 proven and tested investment strategies that I use every single day in my business in order to grow my wealth and manage my portfolio. I hope you take advantage of all the knowledge below, and don't forget to click like and subscribe so we can get more of these awesome tips. See you in the next video.